Okay, I think I'm here. Yeah, I got two people here waiting. Okay. All right. Hey, Tommy. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Tommy? Great. Okay, hang on a second. Getting her going here. Let's see, there should be a way where we can chat too. Hey, there's chat.
Hey Matt, can you hear me?
I actually can. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I had to step away. I had to use the bathroom before we started.
No worries.
Yeah, but I don't have a camera on this computer, so I gotta.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. Glad you can hear me. You can see me, yeah?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great.
Okay, cool. We'll just hang out for a little bit. Hopefully some more people will join us and we'll get going.
Cool.
Right on. Eventually, you'll probably mute your mic there, Jeff.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see. Figure out. Share screen. Where's my chat window? Oh, there. Start a new chat. Ah. Oh, more people are coming. Gotta invite them. Ah, there. All right, I got Ryan here. There he is.
Hey, Matt, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, nice. You have 4x flocking behind you?
No, it's a 4x piece of duvetine.
Nice. Awesome.
Oh, can you see the edges of it? Oh no!
Oh, we can a little bit.
Oh my God, it's 7 o'clock.
I know we're here. So I have some people email me about it. I'm gonna.
Okay.
I just gotta tell them how to get in.
Here, let's see. Tommy and Jeff, can you guys find that chat and type something real quick? Make sure we can communicate with the sound off. Hey, there's Jeff. Great. Tommy, you there? Can you hear us? Geez, Ryan, it's bright out there still.
Oh yeah! Wow, nice. I like yours now with the all on black limbo. That's good.
Somebody's calling me. Hello? Yes. Hey, Tony, what's up?
I'll be right back. Tell Tony I just sent him a link to join. Tony Bella.
Yeah, hang on one second. Yeah.
I emailed him a link to join.
Oh, Ryan just emailed you a link.
Be right back.
Check your email. No, we're just getting her going. We got a couple people in here. I think, yeah. Oh, here's a bunch of people. Come on, get in here. Admit. Get all up in here, everybody. Roy's here. All right. Hello. Hey, Ryan.
Yes.
Which email did you send it to Tony?
1 second. sfstunts@aol.com.
sfstunts@aol.com. Hey, he found it. Hey, everybody, we're just getting everybody in here. We'll go in shortly. Here's another one. Tony's iPad, there you are. They're stacking up. You good, Tony? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna hang up. Bye. Okay, hang on, guys. I'm admitting more people here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. All right. Just a couple more minutes here. We'll just make sure everything's good to go. Let's see.
Right. We got John's son here.
Yeah, cool. You can see my presentation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, great. More people.
Yeah, do you want to start at like 7:10, Matt?
Sure. Okay, we'll start at 7:10, everybody. So just hang out for a little bit. We'll get her going. Use the chat.
Really is, we just brought you all here for the chat room.
Yeah, we just wanted to go back old school. I don't know how I can do this, but let's see. All right.
Yeah, so can we just put them in the bag with the other fish chicken? Yeah.
So those who just joined, we're gonna start at 7:10. Just waiting for some lollygaggers. Here we go. Here's another one. There is a chat window if you guys want to chat a little bit before we get going. Oh, Roy, get in here.
Nice.
So you just see my presentation, right? Do you see me still?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If you press the stop video, then we wouldn't be able to see you. We would just see the presentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like. There you go. I don't know if we end up staying below 30 people or whatever. Like, I'm just gonna post the link in a couple places and see if more people will join. Or that's what I'll do is I'm just gonna open up the wait list and it'll just send everybody an email.
Okay.
We'll just see what happens.
Oh gosh.
I mean, because I had 45 people signed up. I mean, this is like honestly this is normal, right? 45 people, you'd expect roughly 20 people to come.
Right. Is that's what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's probably making their coronavirus bread, COVID bread. They're checking the oven.
Yeah, they're all getting their yeast ready and everything.
Right? They got to feed the yeast.
Feed the yeast. That's really funny.
We got some yeast coming in the mail, hopefully.
Oh yeah?
Make some bread.
I've had like yeast in my cupboard for like, I want to say 6 months. That's probably more accurate.
Okay.
I've been ready for this moment.
Earthquake! Ah! That is not too far out of the realm of possibility here in California. Let's not joke about that.
That can happen now.
Yeah, right? When it rains, it pours. All right, just a minute away or so. I don't see any more people trying to get in here.
Yeah, well, I doubled the total capacity, so I think that everybody that's on the wait list should get an email now saying that, come on in.
Okay, here's another one.
I'm gonna post. I'm gonna post on Facebook and then we'll go ahead.
Here's another.
Do you have Jenna Poole's email or phone number?
I don't even know who that is.
Okay. Perfect.
Oh, it's 7:10.
Yeah. All right. Let's get started, Matt.
Okay, guys, here we go. We're gonna get started here. Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is our first virtual workshop that we're doing here at Bullet Lighting Rental. My name is Matt Stoop. I'm a active Bay Area gaffer. Been gaffing about 10 years or so. We'll whip this up for you guys, and we'll see how it goes. It's kind of a test run, so a lot of new boundaries here that we are embarking on as far as Bolt. But let's get going. Okay, so this workshop is going to be about intro to gaffing, kind of talk about all the aspects about how to be a gaffer, basically. Okay, so here we go. Let's, oh, hang on, sorry. Technical difficulties. Here we go. Okay, real quick, first, let's just talk about some quick announcements, some stuff that we've got going on that you can access right away after the website or after the workshop. On our website, bulletlightingrental.com, there is a resource tab on there that has some pretty cool stuff. There's a email sign up that you can sign up to get, notifications about when the next workshops are going to be. I don't know when we're going to do it next, but we do hold events at the shop from time to time, like game night and stuff like that, where we just kind of hang out and get together and play games and not try to stress out about work too much and just kick back and do that. Maybe we'll have to figure out somehow that we can do some sort of virtual game night or something. We'll figure out something there. Let that be worldwide, which would be pretty cool. There's a blog on there where we have all sorts of types of blogs about gear and how we lit things and tools and tool sets and stuff like that. We're, now that we're all kind of hanging out at home, we're developing more content for that. So there's some stuff on there, but definitely come back and check it out as we continue to update and post new stuff there. And there's also a crew list for the locals in the Bay Area. You can sign up multiple times. It's free. I've definitely had producers continually reach out to the shop and me personally, wanting to get recommendations for crew members and stuff like that. Anything from PAs, art department, grip and electric, camera. You can sign yourself up there for multiple stuff. It's pretty cool. I've heard, people get jobs. I think I'm on there and I've gotten a call through that crew list to go to work, which is great. And then real quick, let's just talk about, the etiquette for this online stuff. As we get more and more people in here, chaos can ensue on some level. So, muting your microphones will help control the chaos quite a bit there. Isn't there something else? Oh yeah, and if, definitely want to try to make this as much interactive as we can. So if, we're talking about something and you have a question or whatever, There is a chat room. Let's see, right here.
Yeah, and I'll just I'll try and field the questions from the chat, Matt, and then
Okay.
I'll like
So
moderate.
I got my business partner and DP extraordinaire, Ryan Thomas, in here with us. He's going to kind of help field questions, and maybe there's links for more information for you guys and stuff like that. So go ahead and ask questions there. Okay. Let's see. Let's move on. The Gaffer. All right. The head honcho. Who is that? What do they do? A gaffer is a slang term for the chief lighting technician, who is the head of the set lighting department. And pretty much the set lighting department handles running power for fixtures that light the set and setting up and operating the fixtures that light the movie. And they also, lighting technicians, they'll do lighting gags, and do some courtesy stuff as far as helping power some other departments as needed. So real quick, let's just go over the rundown of the set lighting department. So here we have the chief lighting technician, or the gaffer, is commonly known. Underneath the gaffer is the ACLT, or Assistant Chief Lighting Technician, which is more commonly known as the best electrician. There used to be a gender tag related to that, the best boy, but I think we're kind of cutting that out, which is cool because I know plenty of female best boys that rock the house. So we'll call them best electrics, or Assistant Chief Lighting Technician, which is pretty long. So we'll say best electric for short. And I guess we'll go, and below the best electric are the set lighting technicians. And there's quite a handful of slang terms for that position as well, like set electric, or lamp op, or juicer, or a spark even. I think in Europe they call them sparks. And then not every job has a LCP, or a lighting council programmer, which used to be kind of called board op. They're the ones that kind of control all the fixtures wirelessly or from a dimmer board from one location tucked away somewhere on set.
Hey,
yeah.
hey Matt.
Yeah.
Real quick, just to make sure that there isn't anybody in the waiting room.
Oh, stand by. We got some people in the waiting room. Let me get them in here real quick. Admit. Welcome.
Keep an eye on that, because I
know I've got like 700.
I know you are. Good luck.
All right, so I'm going to get rid of the chat or I'll just put it over here. Okay, sorry guys, let's get back to this. So we're just talking about the set lighting department and the hierarchy and kind of how it all works. There's definitely this kind of rigid hierarchy, which I think really flows really well here. You guys can't see my mouse, can you? Can you see my mouse?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, oh, okay, great. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Cool.
we can.
Sorry, this is like my first time doing this. So the core crew here is the gaffer here, and the best electric, and then the set lighting technicians. Sometimes, depending on the job, you'll have a lighting council programmer who's controlling fixtures through DMX and stuff like that, color and intensity, moving fixtures, all kinds of stuff that they can have control over. And on some larger shows, there's also the rigging gaffer, who has a rigging best and rigging electrics that work underneath them. And they're kind of a whole kind of separate entity that shows up before and after shooting calls to either, set up. Usually when there's a rigging team, they have a larger power plant that they need to land somewhere and run the main line of power, and some fixtures that might be, if you're on location, like rigged up on buildings or rooftops and stuff like that, they'll set all of those, while the on-set team has fixtures and has a little bit of distro, but a lot of the big heavy pushes as far as, especially distro and doing rigging for the lighting department would be, on a bigger show, would be done through the rigging electric team. Yeah, that's pretty much how the hierarchy kind of works. And it's all scalable to the types of projects that you're on. Sometimes, I've been on many shows, it's just me. It's just a gaffer, which works in some levels, but, because the gaffer is like the director of the lighting, so at some point it's hard to be able to direct the lighting, but have to run over and touch the fixture and dim it down or dim it up or move it or whatever, and not be at the monitor making sure that those little adjustments that are being made are the right ones. But it can work. Okay, if there's any questions, just go ahead and ask them in the chat and we'll get to them. Moving on. Okay, so I was trying to break it down into some basic categories about how a gaffer works and what is required. And the first, or I don't know if it's the first, they're all very important, these three aspects. But we'll start with this first aspect, which is creativity. A big part of lighting is working with the director of photography and designing the lighting and creating mood and telling the story visually through lighting. This is a picture of a feature that I just did. It's called The Alternate. It's a sci-fi show. And so basically it revolves around this projector that is on in the middle of the frame there with its beam of light. And so, creatively, there's a window there that has some light coming in through the back, and there's haze in there, so we can kind of see those angles of light. And then, there's color contrast going on here, which is a big part of kind of this storytelling here. Everything's kind of muted in this kind of orange world, but then there's this pop of blue color emitting from the projector, just kind of like elements that the gaffer and the director of photography kind of talk about in pre-pro and begin to design these things in pre-production, is kind of this part of that kind of creative element of how we're going to tell this story visually. And another part of it is being the creative end of it is, how lighting develops this three-dimensional look on what is inevitably a 2D plane. The film emulsion back in the day, or even just a video screen is this two-dimensional thing. Now it kind of gets in modern day with virtual reality, that's probably changing a little bit as far as 3D spaces or whatever. But so the lighting gives it this 3D look, and where you place the fixtures and how you accomplish that and what fixtures you use, helps tell that story visually. Because if it was just flat and boring, it would be boring story. All right. So creativity or being creative and telling these stories visually. Another aspect of being a gaffer is a very technical end, actually. They're very, I feel it's almost like 50-50, and that's kind of like personally what I love about gaffing is there's this creative element and being creative and coming up with interesting ways and how to tell that story visually through light, and then there's this whole other end of how you like technically do that. Here, this is a picture of I tried to do this whole presentation with BTS of that feature film that I did in December, The Alternate, but I didn't have all the photos, and I'll tell you what are these photos doing. And oh, Ryan, are you there, Ryan? Are we recording this?
In this,
I don't think.
and it's gonna be posted on our YouTube.
You're gonna do that?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Hey Matt, just real quick, do you want to check again to see if we have any more people in the waiting
Okay,
room?
hang on. I'm gonna check to see if there's anybody else coming in here. No, I think we're good. Not even, there's a lot of people. Hi, everybody. Okay, let's get back to it. Sorry. Okay, technical. You know, a big part of the technical aspect of it is, choosing the right lighting fixture that's going to tell that story visually, and making sure that, okay, well, sorry, here, let's get back to this photo real quick. This kind of helped me. A big part of the technical aspect is, making sure that we get the right exposure and keeping the continuity of the lighting in the project. Those are kind of definitely more, bigger picture types of things when it comes to technically achieving a cohesive look to the film throughout the whole film, or even in between or through each scene and each shot of the scene, and all the way down to even more of a technical level. Like, kind of the reason why I put this picture up here was because in this corner, if you can see my mouse right here, there's these are stingers or extension cords. We knew that we were going to do a lot of lighting in the ceiling, and so, as far as technically, kind of covering our butts, we ran additional power up into the ceiling here. So one of these is powering a handful of light mats and whatever else, and then, just to, in case things change, because things are just kind of always changing when you're lighting a movie, or, the creative process can change at any second. And, and having the forethought of putting additional power up in the ceiling for quick and easy access, because if all of a sudden we needed to like add another fixture to this set, and we wouldn't have time to, on the day, as they call it, run additional power up there. So, that's just kind of another technical end of always trying to anticipate needs, and kind of cover your butt and stuff like that, as far as technically making sure that you can achieve what needs to happen when making a movie, or any project really. And another part of being technically proficient when coming to lighting sets is building in that flexibility there, whether it's running additional power in hard to get to places, and sometimes when we're talking about the rigging team, they'll potentially run and lace out power in areas that we might shoot there and we might not. We're not really sure. Or, things will change, and the backlight, instead of wanting to come from camera right, needs to now come from camera left because the blocking has changed a little bit. And so, just kind of really making sure that you cover all your bases technically, is a big part of the job. Here, let me get back to my notes real quick. We talked about continuity and lighting, consistency throughout the scene, and then on top of that, there's consistency throughout the whole film. Maybe there's some sort of thematic lighting arc that would happen, and the sky's the limit, or just endless possibilities as far as what that is and how you do that. And that's all stuff that you'll talk ideally with the DP about and develop this plan. You don't kind of really come up with it on the spot, especially because when we go and we're making movies, or any project really, movies, essentially, we don't shoot them. You don't always shoot them in order. It's almost not it's usually not efficient to do that way. So when you're shooting scene 12 and then shooting scene 40 and shooting scene 100, and you're just kind of bouncing all around throughout the day, and if there is some sort of arc there as far as continuity and lighting, you have to have your notes and make sure that you're following the path of how that's supposed to all look. Anyway, continuity, and maintaining exposure is a huge thing. That's like a big part of the job of being a gaffer, is making sure that there is the appropriate amount of light to expose the project so we can see what it is, or not see if that's part of that storytelling, you know, some silhouette shots or whatever. Hang on, let me just double check. Okay, we're good. And then, you know, another part of, you know, I have a note here about talking about problem solving. That can kind of go through all of these aspects, whether it's creative problem solving or technical problem solving. You know, a technical aspect of being able to solve problems quickly is, you know, a lot of times I try to, you know, I'll design the lighting look for a scene or whatever, and I'll usually have a backup unit or two, or, you know, so with HMIs, sometimes they're finicky. I'll maybe, if we can afford it, I'll have an extra HMI, whether we use pieces from that HMI or just try to use that whole unit if something goes down. Or, you know, I call it back pocket fixture, where, you know, we do what we plan to do, but then there's still this moment where, oh, we just need like a little light in this part of the set, or, you know, that fill's not bright enough, let's bring in another light, or we need an eye light. You know, a lot of times I'll have a little eye light fixture that's just kind of standing by, waiting to come in to solve any kind of problems that need to happen. Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, technical aspects. And then there's a third aspect, which is communication. This is a picture of the alternate. That's me on the ladder. I look grumpy, but it's in the middle of the night and it's freezing. It's like December. Well, it's, you know, California December. On the left here is Jason Joseph, the DP, and on the right is the key grip, Ryan Moore. You know, and so communication is huge. I mean, making a movie is such a collaborative art form, and that's, I think, well, a lot of us are all here because we are passionate about that. No one person, not even the auteur, you know, makes a movie by themselves for the most part. So here we are, we're game planning, we're talking about something that's coming next. But, you know, so the gaffer has to, you know, obviously communicate with the director of photography, making sure that we're on the same page, and the DP kind of helps me say, okay, this is coming up next, and, you know, let's make sure we have this, and then I just kind of pass it down the line. You know, in general, I like to try to have my best electric be, I like to try to get them 2 steps ahead so that they can have me be a step ahead, if that makes sense. So I'll maybe tell my best electric, okay, you know, next up, you know, we're gonna, you know, I don't know exactly a specific example, but just in general, you know, I'll try to keep them 2 steps ahead of me so that they can keep me a step ahead of the DP and the first assistant director. And, you know, and as we move on, things are kind of already in motion, and we just cruise through the day and
Hey,
have
Matt.
a great time. Yeah.
Really good question from Jenna.
Oh, yeah, there's a question.
How to maintain continuity throughout the scene.
Oh, okay. How to maintain, the question is how to maintain continuity through the scene. And a big part of that is using the tools that the gaffer has at hand, which would be, that was a slide that we're going to get to a little later, but we can talk about it real quick now, and then maybe we can just go into a little more detail about it. But, you know, the main tools that a gaffer has to, you know, have a technical understanding about what is happening with the lighting is a light meter, which measures the intensity of a source, and they have a color meter, which, you know, measures the color makeup of any source. And there's gels and whatnot, color gels that they can color correct or use party colors to change the color of a source. There's also a gaffer's glass, which is a really thick kind of ND filter that they put up to their eye to look into a source to make sure that the angle of light is right. Jenna, does that kind of help answer your question?
I have a question, Matt.
Hey, all right.
When you're metering, what are you looking for?
I'm talking. Hang on. Whew. All right. When I'm metering, what am I looking for? So the light meter measures light through two ways, really. There, on the light meter, you can set your light meter to the camera settings of the camera, and then you can measure light in f-stops. So it'll tell you, if you hold your light meter up and read a source, it'll, with the camera settings in there, it'll be like, the lighting exposure is at a 2.8, or it's at a f4, or, or whatever it is that's telling you that that light is bright enough to properly expose at that certain stop. Does that help? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can also measure an absolute measurements of light, which would be a foot candle, which is based off of one candle 1 foot away produces 1 foot candle. We'll kind of get into that a little later at the end of it when we start to talk about photometrics a little bit. We'll touch on photometrics and stuff like that. So just sit tight there, Jenna. But hopefully that'll hold you over for a little bit.
This is my last question for you.
Oh, one more question. Go ahead.
Our waiting room.
There's nobody in the waiting room.
Perfect. Okay. Continue.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, let's just recap real quick. The third aspect of being gaffer is this communication aspect, where you're ahead of the department, and you have to communicate with other department heads to achieve things. It's such a collaborative effort. The electrics will set a light, but usually you're not going to have just that hard light on. You need some diffusion, or you need to shape it with some flags. And so that's where you kind of communicate with your key grip, being like, okay, let's add some diffusion here, or let's shape this light a little better. Our art department or the props department, maybe there's some sort of prop or that needs power, or we need to figure out some creative technical solution to stick a light into something that doesn't work, that needs to glow. Even, less frequent, but, even maybe wardrobe, they're wearing lighting things, and, the electrics can help them as far as power, or, building an LED thing, or I don't know, maybe that wardrobe stuff there's somebody special for that. But there's just like between the department heads communicating, and and talking with production, being like, okay, we're going to do a company move, and we're going to go to this house, and I know we have access to the house, but in order to shoot scene whatever, we'll need to stick a light in the neighboring backyard to light the background of that set. And and this is kind of where the communication kind of goes into your department. And usually I'll probably have my best electric be like, okay, we're gonna company move, can you check in with production to make sure that we have access to the backyard of the neighboring house, because we need to run power in there and set a light. And that's kind of where the communication and the delegation starts to really happen, and you really get a lot of things done at the same time. And so your best electric will jump on the phone or jump on the walkie or whatever, and start communicating and helping you be a step ahead there, as far as when you land, those questions are all answered, whether you have access or not. I don't know. Let's see. But as long as we put that ball in other departments' courts, cordially, and we can get things done.
And Dylan's question.
Okay, we got a quick question here. On the topic of communication, how often does the gaffer talk with the director, or does it all primarily run through the DP? That's a pretty good question. It kind of depends, on the relationship between the three. But I think it would. I think ideally, honestly, the director would communicate to the DP about maybe a specific lighting need or request or desire or whatever. And then, you know, it's just kind of part of the delegation process where the director's got so much stuff going on, and, you know, the visual storytelling and capturing it all on the camera is really the DP's responsibility. So the director can kind of pass that off to the DP, and then, you know, and it's just kind of like this delegation process where now the DP communicates with the gaffer. And then maybe from there, the gaffer is like, okay, well, I'm going to put this light here, but it needs to be this really soft kind of light. And so now they have to delegate down to the key grip to say, okay, we're going to need that diffusion, and the source needs to be this size, and just kind of go on and on from there. Maybe we can talk about this real quick. One thing that this might kind of also help answer that question, but on a different level between different department heads. A lot of times, I try to, the DP will come to me and give me grip notes, which is like, we'll be lighting a scene and then the DP wants some passive fill from like a bounce card or something like that. And especially when we're kind of on a bigger show where I've got a key grip and they have a team of people, and then I'm, you know, the gaffer, and I have my lighting team underneath me. There's like a lot going on. And it helps me, I feel, work faster when the DP will delegate to the right channels to get things done. I think it can happen faster, so that the DP tells me that he wants some more passive fill, and so now I have to like find the key grip to bring in more fill, or you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Well, I guess it's kind of a direct route if the director wanted to have a certain lighting thing and he came to me to make sure that was, you know, I don't know. I think that's fine. You know, it's really all about the relationships that you have with everybody, and everybody's just trying to do the same thing, which is make something memorable and great and have fun doing it, you know? So hopefully that answers your question. But you know, I definitely think that there's major hierarchies in the film industry, and if we kind of all follow these channels of communication, that everything will just go a lot faster. You know, I don't, you know, when the DP asked me for a bunch of grip related things, it's fine, because sometimes the DP doesn't have a chance to go run around, you know, find the key grip. I'm not exactly sure why the key grip honestly isn't really close to the monitor or the camera or myself with the DP, but that happens. I mean, rarely you have enough crew to really do everything that you need to do, but we manage. All right, let's see. Oh, somebody's got a dip. That's cool. All right, Keith, take care. We're gonna move on here. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're just gonna real quick kind of blaze through kind of in the life of a gaffer from start to finish through a project. So the first thing that has to happen is you get a call. Here's Leonardo. He's got a call. He's going to gaff some. It's going to be awesome. But he's got so many questions. You know, when you get a call and someone's like, hey, are you available to gaff? And you can say, I'm available and interested. And then there's just a bunch of questions, you know, that you should probably ask to make sure that it's the right project for you, or that you're available, you know, like where it is. That's what this little compass is. You like these visual things here? Like, where's the job? You know, some people travel around and you meet people all over, and you know, you could get a call from New York. Hey, I needed a gaffer, and you know, maybe you're in California or you're wherever, and you're not in New York, and you can't say yes to that job. And I guess you could travel over there anyway. So there's a bunch of questions there. Where's the job? When, like a huge thing is when, because you could, you know, have a couple of gigs and they might overlap. So you got to make sure that you don't double book yourself. But maybe we can do another workshop. We can talk all about double booking and how all that works. Anyway, and other important questions I think to ask, is this an invoice job? Is it a payroll job? This picture down here, how big are the crew? Is there a key grip, or, can I hire a best, or how many electricians are we, just kind of get an idea of the scope of the project through kind of answering all these questions. Money bags, we're all interested in money bags. Excuse me. What's the rate? What's the hourly minimum for the day? Are all just kind of important questions to ask when you're, considering a job. Okay, let's move on because we're going to blaze through these. Okay, next. Okay, so once you guys negotiate a rate and you kind of get some information about what we're doing in general and where it is and when and what your rate is, then they'll start sending you some creative information. So on the left here, this is a one-liner, they call it. It's basically shooting schedule for the most part. They're really great when you have like a good AD that knows how to make a really good one-liner. They're color-coded like this. And so basically what this is, I don't know if you can see it that well, but the scene's up there and there'll be a little description of the scene. And the color coding tells you if it's a night exterior or a night interior, a day exterior, a day interior. And they have some tentative call times here and stuff like that. They'll also send you other creative information like storyboards, and down here are some reference images about, and this is kind of stuff that the director kind of develops, part of their like lookbook or, design of the project, to help explain and communicate to all the department heads about how this project is supposed to look and feel, and the rough framing of shots and everything, like through the storyboards. So you kind of gather all this creative information, and sometimes they might just send you a script, and you should ask some questions like, do you guys have, storyboards, or do you have any reference images? Usually the reference image stuff kind of starts to come through the director of photography, although definitely directors do have reference images that they probably share with the DP, and then the DP can share them with the other department heads and come up with their own. And but ideally, for sure, the director and the DP are on the same level as far as what they're trying to create together. Okay, so you gather all this creative information, and then it's time to tech scout. So you don't always tech scout, unfortunately. On a longer project like a movie, some of this stuff's from the movie. This far left one, this is us tech scouting. We're standing outside of a house looking at a day exterior place to shoot for the movie. And so this is all the department heads. We got the second assistant director, and there's Hilton, the first assistant director. In the middle there's our director. I think that's Jason, our DP. I think that's props. There's Ryan, the key grip. We're just, you get all the department heads together, and you basically go to these locations, whether they're in a studio or on location like we are here, and you just kind of talk about, you talk about some of the creative elements to it, but it's a technical scout, really. So we want to figure out kind of roughly where the camera's going to go, and you don't have a huge sense of the blocking and where talent goes, but maybe like for this picture, there was a scene where a car drives up to a house and somebody gets led off, and the car drives away and a person walks up to the front of the house. And so that's kind of like the rough understanding of the blocking. And then we'll talk about, the DP and the director will kind of hash out how they want to cover that scene. But, real quick, ideally, before the tech scout happens, there's kind of a location scout that the gaffer doesn't really have much to do with. It's more like the director and the DP and a producer, and probably, I don't know if the first AD goes on a location scout. I don't think so. Usually it's like production designer, DP, director, and maybe a producer or something like that, or like a locations manager, maybe a producer or something like that. Anyway, so on a location scout, they're figuring out, like, do we want to shoot here? Does this work? You know, talking with the production designer, does this space work for visually telling this story? And what do we have to do to this place to make it work? And so once they kind of have a rough idea of all these different locations, then, you know, and depending on how complex the location scout can be, they can spend a good amount of time there taking reference images and almost starting to build a storyboard through some of these on location kind of reference frame grabs of what they want to do there. And if they get a lot of time to do that, it's great. It lets the technical scout really get a lot out of it, because the DP and the director will know, like, oh, we want to put the camera here and this is what we're going to see. And the art department will be like, okay, we need to dress this, or, you know, where can we put the lighting to light the scene? Anyway, okay, I'm rambling on. Let's keep going. This next photo, you know, I like to keep track of the sun, especially when we're on location. You know, the sun is always moving, and at some point could very much affect the movie and the lighting and the continuity of it. And so you kind of have to keep an eye on it. It can totally creep up on you. So it's always good to know there's app. I think it's Sun Surveyor. There's a free version of it. I enjoy it. It works for me. I just took a screenshot of my phone using the app. I've been doing it more lately. It helps me kind of remember. I can recall the photo and be like, oh yeah, from, like, you know, noon to 3, that direct sunlight, if the clouds aren't out, is going to come through there. And that's a problem that we're going to have to solve technically to control that source. Another big part of the Tech Scout is talking about staging. This is just a random picture. This is actually on set, but I thought I'd throw it in there just to kind of reference the idea of, you know, every department has tons of stuff, and you got to figure out where all that's going to go. Everything from the placement of the generator to where the trucks are going to go to where your on-set staging of your lighting equipment's going to go. Especially on location, sometimes space is at a premium, and you really have to, you know, work with other departments and figure out who needs the space more, or, you know, and how all that's going to work and how it's all going to cohesively come together so that everybody can do what they need to do to make the movie. And then over here's a breaker box. You know, definitely one thing that you always want to try to look for, especially if you're using house power at any given location, is to make sure that you know where the breaker box is, and making sure that there's access to it on the day when we're shooting. And that's kind of helping your best electric. You know, you'll find the breaker box and take a picture of it, and, you know, you can reference it in pre-production with the best electric, and at least know where it is, so you can tell the best electric where the box is in case you guys trip a fuse or whatever. So, and a big part is making sure that you have access to the breaker box, because a lot of times in certain locations it's behind a locked door, or it's, you know, in some random place. It's always good to make sure you know where that is, so you can manage the power source. Let's see what, and then let's see.
We're pretty good on
oh yeah,
good questions.
More questions?
No, we're good.
Oh, okay, cool.
You can continue.
Oh, and here's definitely where you would start the conversation of, you know, like that special access. Like, okay, I understand that we're shooting at this house, and we have access to it, obviously, but the house next to it, we need to put a light in their yard, or let's see if that's even a possibility. Production will go, and a locations manager will go knock, you know, maybe not right then and there, maybe so, but maybe at some other point in time, they'll call or reach out or knock on the door and say, hey, we're making a movie. Can we put a light in your backyard? And hopefully they'll be cool. They probably have to give them money, or, you know, I don't know, whatever it takes on some level to figure that out. Okay, let's move on. So once you guys are done tech scouting, you've kind of gathered all the information for each scene that you guys are going to shoot, and you have a production meeting. Probably a couple days later, there's probably a lot of questions that need to be answered before you can have a productive production meeting. As far as, you know, if you have a production meeting right after, there's probably a lot of questions that aren't answered. That'll make it difficult to have a good meeting. But so this is just, I don't even know who these people are. This is a random picture I found on the internet because, you know, who takes pictures of a production meeting? It's kind of funny. I don't have any pictures of us having production meetings. And then smaller projects too, they'll be virtual, or they'll just be teleconferencing and talking about more logistics and answering questions and stuff. You know, they'll change the schedule around. This is a picture. I just made my own notes, like, oh, we deleted that scene, or we're not going to shoot that scene. We're going to put that scene here and stuff like that. You know, this is kind of a good time as gaffer, and along with your key grip. One big thing that is pretty common as far as adjusting the schedule for lighting, at least, and that often doesn't really happen because of talent schedule or location, you know, parameters and stuff like that. But if there is some wiggle room there, you know, a big thing is if you shoot a day for night scene, or, you know, if we're inside and it needs to be night and excuse me. Whew. We can only be in a location during the day, but there's a night interior scene. But we're also shooting in that location at daytime. You know, depending, it might be advantageous to start with the night interior stuff during the day first, because maybe in the beginning of the day, there's more time for the grip team to black out windows or build tents or whatever that needs to happen, you know, because there's a bunch of other stuff going on. The camera needs to be built, the talent needs to go through, you know, the works, as they call it. And, you know, I'm sure there's other things, or maybe you're doing stunts that day and you need to take time with the actors to practice the stunts, or what. Usually at the top of the day, there's time to do something more complicated, like blacking out a house for night, because then once we're done shooting that night interior stuff during the day, we can very much quicker tear down all those blacks, you know, and be ready for a day for day interior. It's just kind of one example that seems pretty common as far as scheduling and hopefully moving scenes around to make it easier on the lighting and grip department as far as the schedule goes. And so these are all things that we can kind of start to hash out at the production meeting. And then, you know, from the location scout, and then they tech scout and get a even more greater sense of the shots that they need, you know. And I think what this is a shot list that's paired with the storyboards. So just kind of start to get more detailed information about what we're shooting, when, and what ideally it's going to eventually, or, you know, a rough idea of what it's going to look like, is information that happens on the production meeting. Oh, and then, you know, this is as a department head, or the gaffer especially, where you can kind of check in with production about those special needs for your department, as far as where the generator is going to go, or, you know, that lamp that we need to put in the next door neighbor's backyard. Like, so do we have access for that? If we don't, you know, how are we going to you know, light the scene in the way that the DP wants it to be lit without having that access? And then that's kind of where this beautiful mix of like creativity and technicality kind of come back in. And then you're like dealing with other department heads and helping try to solve that problem. So those three aspects all just swirling in this beautiful dance of chaos. Okay, moving on. So, it depends on the complexity and the lighting gags, as they're called, or effects that need to happen. You might be able to you might have, ideally you'll get paid to do this, but you'll have like a lighting test. All kinds of stuff can happen in the lighting test. And a lot of times, actually, the lighting test is really helpful if you have the camera that you're going to be shooting on, and you can look at these lighting gags or lighting effects, or, a lot of times, DPs or production designers or even directors, like, oh, I found this like really cool LED, string light stuff, and this would go perfect in the bedroom of so-and-so's character, or and since it's not a movie rated or, industry standard rated lighting fixtures, there's potential for them to have, funky color, or they'll flicker in camera. So, a big part of doing lighting tests on that end too is making sure that, those things don't pop up on the day when there's no time to solve those problems. You're like, okay, well, if we shut at this, shutter speed, or maybe it just doesn't work for the camera settings that need to happen. Like, hey, these lights that you want to use for the scene, just like they'll flicker, or they look really green, and oops, sorry, and trying to color correct them, or it just kind of, we have to find another solution, basically. But these pictures here, I tried to figure out. I'm putting video into this particular Google presentation thing was pretty clunky. It would have to send me to some other website that would anyway. But this picture is this spinning light gag thing that rotates counterclockwise or clockwise from us looking at it. There's 2 Astera tubes, and so it's for the alternate, and that is the portal lighting gag, because in the story, this guy finds a portal that's projected onto the screen from that projector that we saw earlier. And so sometimes when we're looking at the character's face, because the portal practically doesn't really do a lighting effect, it like slowly morphs and does this kind of spinny type of a thing. So we design this lighting fixture that accentuates that from that visual storytelling standpoint. So that's at the shop. And Ryan Moore, the key grip's not pictured there. His backpack's there, actually, which is funny. But, him and I were in the shop together trying to figure out, okay, like, how can we make, some sort of spinning light gag that is supposed to be the portal. And so, yeah, so, I don't think we got paid for that day because it was like an indie feature, but that's okay. But, as far as that's concerned, it definitely doesn't hurt to ask to get paid for doing that work. And even if you guys compromise somewhere in the middle, or they just flat out say no, that's all battles that you're going to have to choose. And there's relationships, there's a lot of political stuff involved in that. But, it doesn't hurt to ask. And I would ask if you can get paid for that time. Anyway, there's another picture of me. This is like late at night. We did a commercial and we needed a small little custom light ribbon LED source to mimic monitors and phone lights and stuff like that for this app commercial that we did. And so, I was making something. And so that, this is at home and, on my own or whatever, but, that's kind of technically a lighting test, or where you're building stuff and testing things. Flicker tests, color tests, but though these 2 examples here, we didn't have the camera, but we've definitely done some lighting tests where we have the camera, and that is really important, because that's really where you get to see what those colors are doing, or how the light movement works, or whatever gag you're trying to do. Anyway, let's move on. Any questions? No. Oh, somebody said, yeah, everybody can see all of that, right? The chat.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. yeah, Sunseeker seems like a good app. Okay, moving on. Okay, so, let's back up real quick. We tech scouted, so we know, the lighting, you come up with a lighting package basically, and you figure out what lighting fixtures you need to light all these scenes. And then you, in the production meeting, you kind of figure out what scenes are going in which order. And depending on the schedule and the turnaround between each scene, you might need to order extra fixtures so that we can be lit for scene 20, and then you can have some technicians jumping ahead with additional fixtures lighting the next scene, because the turnaround between those two scenes, maybe we're shooting in the kitchen and we have to go up to the upstairs bedroom or something like that. So you have to make sure that you have enough gear and crew really to be able to make all that happen ideally seamlessly. So these are just silly pictures of my notes here. This picture on the left is usually some crazy chicken scratches that happen when I'm talking to the DP over the phone, and we're kind of rough outline about what might work. This looks like what daylight package for the most part. Excuse me, a little tungsten in there. Anyway, so I'll just kind of write down some real quick notes while we talk on the phone or whatever, and then jump on the computer and I'll make a much more detailed list of gear that I submit to the rental house. And then of course on the right there will be the actual order. And one thing that I wanted to definitely mention here is when maybe your list when you send the email to the rental house is perfect, but you really, and I personally have to do better at this, you have to double check your order, making sure that everything that you're asking for is actually on there. Because once they send out that order, it'll go to your producer or line producer or whatever, and let's say like you're missing M40 and a generator to power it, and that's like $1,200 or something like that. And the producer looks at just the number and goes, "Oh yeah, that's approved. Great, go ahead, go for it." And then hopefully you catch it in time. You realize, oh man, I don't have like the main key light of my package. And then you kind of have to start all over and be like, oh wait, we're supposed to add this. And so before you check in with your line producer, really make sure that everything that's on that list and that is under that bottom line number there is what you need before you make sure that you're approved and good to go. There's some other things real quick too to talk about when you're making gear lists is at least on a bigger show, you'll have like a run of show package. Like this is the gear that you have day in and day out throughout the whole show. And then there'll also be day play items. And those will usually be in a separate list. So you'll have, you run a show package with your truck on it, but then, oh, when we're at this location or shooting these scenes, we need X, Y, and Z gear, and having dates and sending in separate emails with those separate packages to kind of keep everything organized. And another thing too is, I talked about, a back pocket fixture, just kind of having some backup stuff. Usually you try to, as best we can, add 20%, especially when it comes to like power distro and stuff like that, like stingers. I really try to make sure when I'm designing a package and ordering the gear that I'll order more than enough stingers. Now, sometimes they go bad, or sometimes, you don't estimate the footage properly. You didn't have enough time on the tech scout, and just really making sure you have more than enough stingers, like probably a 25 footer and a 50 footer. Oh, that's kind of funny. This one says 25 feet and then it's supposed to say 50 feet. Those are just kind of common footage of stingers. There's 100 footers and stuff. And if, in your design, you need those things, obviously order those and order extra. But, yeah, padding your gear list a little bit, can really help. And, sometimes, and it's good too to maybe throw on an extra fixture or some, the lighting fixtures are what can get very expensive. And you can kind of help make yourself look good in a weird way if like you order some extra stuff and then you can go back and the producer's like, oh man, I know this is all the stuff that you need, but this is the bottom line is this number is over budget. What can we do? And you can you can just be like, all right, well, let me try to like figure out something, and then you can like cut that extra sky panel that you might not need. But certainly if you can get away with it, it can be very advantageous to you on set, whether you can push it ahead to get ahead and be further along for the next scene, or if there's unforeseen thing that comes up where you can be like, oh, I've got this extra sky panel. It doesn't hurt, just like it doesn't hurt to ask to whatever it is, if you need more fixtures, you want to get paid for all the pre-pro that you're doing, or needing access in a certain spot, just communicate and ask. You'll be surprised what you can get away with. Okay. Just when you're sending the gear list, obviously CCing your producer. Sometimes I try to keep the DP out of it, and sometimes they want to know because they want to help figure out what they can cut, or prioritize.
Help.
Yeah. Help. But sometimes though, you can tell that they're kind of overstimulated, or just they got a lot going on, so like don't worry about it. I try to keep the DP out of it, but sometimes they need to be involved, depending on how complex it is, or if you've got a key grip and a gaffer in separate department heads, usually the key grip will, from their tech scout notes, submit their separate gear lists, but we should always kind of be in communication about what they're ordering and what the fixtures are, or so we kind of CC each other on our gear lists. What's up, Jesse? Cool. Oh, and if you're on a bigger show too, sometimes your best boy or best electric can come with you on the scout, which is great, especially if the power distribution is much more involved with landing a generator and running power to all these locations or parts of the set. And so sometimes, or you'll CC your best technician as well, just to make sure that, and they can be another set of eyes to go over it and be like, oh, we forgot this, or even they might have their more like distro package that they're planning and the things that they want to use to do their job the way they want to do it, type of a thing. And so you just kind of make sure, back to communicating and keeping everybody on the same page. You can kind of do it however you want, but I like to do, the truck at the top, whether it's an electric truck, or if I'm just kind of the only one tech scouting, I'll put the grip truck there. I like to do the lamps next. And then I'll, just kind of organize everything, do the distro. If I'm doing everything, I'll do, if there's a dolly or something, or, camera movement gear, I'll do grip gear after that, stands, carts, and then miscellaneous, usually like foggers and stuff like that, hazers and stuff like that will kind of go there, because that seems to kind of fall in the electric department, even though it's kind of a practicals effects department thing, as I understand it. But, it requires power, so it's my problem. I don't know. But anyway, so that's kind of everything that goes into, your gear list. Let's move on. Okay. Oh, a big part of the gear list is making sure that it's approved. And you kind of work with the rental house. The rental house will say, hey, I haven't heard from the producer. Can you help me out? Or they'll reach out to the producer, or I'm, as a gaffer, I'm curious, like, is this the stuff we're getting? Because if it's not the stuff that we can get, I need to creatively problem solve other lighting fixtures and other lighting, designs that are within budget to make it work and make sure that I have everything there, so there's just kind of a lot going on. So communicating with your producers, making sure that those things are approved, and that you're good to go, or making the appropriate changes to make sure that you're in budget. Okay, so this is so once that's all taken care of, we do it doesn't always happen, but we'll do a prep day, which is basically where you have ideally the keys, the gaffer, and the key grip, and the best technicians. Maybe more. It depends on how much gear, how many trucks we have to load, and what the package is, how big the package is, and that's kind of where you negotiate with the producer and be like, oh man, we've got all this stuff, I need another electric, and the key grip's going to ask for another grip, and we need 6 of us total to make sure that we have everything. And so basically what you do on a prep day is you're at the rental house, the rental shop is prepping all the gear, and then they bring it out to you, and then we pretty much do the same thing, but as technicians we'll test every light, and then we'll organize it, figure out where it's going to go on the carts and go on the trucks. We'll also that's a huge part that takes up, and you can have multiple prep days actually. It just kind of depends on the budget and how big the show is, and how much you can negotiate, really. If you can negotiate more than one prep day, that's huge. Labeling things and just really getting as organized as you can, because once you show up on set and you just start, running like crazy to shoot the movie, there's just no time there is some time, but if you can get all that done and organize things and label things, your best technician knows where everything is and where it all should go. Just makes everything a lot smoother on the day.
Matt, would you say that, I feel like just during that process, just to make it clear that, that's something that the gaffer is overseeing. Maybe they're not doing all of those things personally, but they're making sure that they're,
sure.
Depending on the size of the shoot, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So
but
what Ryan's mentioning is, depending on the size of the shoot, the gaffer isn't the one that's like test firing all these lights. They're just kind of more overseeing it, and it's really where the best technician is really the one that's like running the show and delegating tasks and stuff like that to however many electrics there are to on the prep day to get everything done. A lot, and depending on the size of the show, and a lot of times, unfortunately, we'll be on our prep day and then things aren't approved. So a big part of what the gaffer is doing on the prep day is reaching out to production, making sure that things are approved, and then there's always still loose ends that need to be tied up. Like, do we have that? I'm still waiting to hear if we have that access to the backyard of the house next door to the house that we're shooting in, and so there's kind of all these loose ends. The DP probably, stayed up late last night coming up with all these cool lighting things, and it's time for you to get caught up, on that level. And some other things that are good to test before you go out on set, especially in the rainy season, at least in California when it rains in the winter, using GFCIs. It's really good to test those things with the lights that you're going to use. And if you're on a shoot where there's a lot of on location, shooting outside and it's going to be raining, you'll want to provide GFCIs for other departments, as far as camera department for their monitors and whatever, and give those to them as soon as possible so that they can test their gear on those GFCIs, because GFCIs can be pretty finicky and trip, and so it's just good to test all those things before you guys get out into the field. And sometimes there's time, or on the prep day, if you have a lighting council programmer, they're probably starting to get the board out and start programming some things for you. And you can kind of do a little lighting test if you have time, or you just kind of play it by ear. But the big part of the prep is to make sure that everything's there, everything works, and you can organize it so that everybody knows where it is and you guys can move efficiently. Oh, somebody's got a question. what is a GFCI? Hey,
There we go. I was just gonna answer in the chat, Matt.
yeah,
Keep
okay,
going.
great.
We
Okay,
gotta.
yeah, you guys can follow that link, figure it out. Okay, moving on. Let's see. So that was the prep day. Okay, now, not always, but sometimes you can have a pre-light, which is pretty much showing up before principal photography and, you know, doing all kinds of things, really. You know, if you have a generator, you're placing the generator and running the main line to all the places where you need power, rigging fixtures. This is not part of the alternate. This is a commercial that we did in the studio, but this is our pre-light day. We're
It doesn't. You wiped?
on the left here. The grips are building a structure 12 by 12
Yeah, you do.
soft box.
And my
Far
shirt.
right, you can see they're all underneath it, and it's about to go up. And in the middle picture, we've got our background lights here, and then these two fixtures facing Polly there are the backlights for the scene that we're lighting. And so basically, you're just kind of trying to jump ahead of the game and light the first shot, ideally, of what you're going to do the next day, so that when everybody shows up, you can just pretty much turn things on and do some tweaks or whatever and go. You don't have to spend 5 hours or more on the day setting up all this stuff. Usually you pre-light what you're going to shoot the beginning of the next day, or the first day that you're going to be shooting. Rarely do you I don't remember exactly which project it was, but there was something that we were going to shoot a couple days later, but they're just in the schedule, there wasn't going to be any time to light that. And so we ended up lighting that on the pre-light day, because we just weren't going to have time to do it later on. And so it was kind of weird. We pre-lit this stuff and we weren't going to show up until a couple days later to do that. But the fact that we had the time to do that then allowed us to just show up on that set and turn things on and go. And that, that's kind of where the AD and in your production meeting, you guys talk about the schedule and utilize the time that you have efficiently to make everything work, as far as what you're going to do on the pre-light day and what you're going to shoot first, depending on what you have to do on your pre-light day. I think that project, what we're going to do on the first day, was really simple, which is always a great way to start. You want to start with these really complicated things at the beginning of a show. Okay. Yeah, let's move on. Okay, so we're pre-lit, we're ready to go. This is a call sheet for the alternate. I thought we'd talk really quickly about a call sheet. So this picture on the left here is the body of the email that the call sheet comes in. There's just obvious information here. You get to find out a lot of information about what you're doing with the call sheet. Like your general crew call and where you're supposed to be. You can, from here you can tell there's 2 locations that day. There's producer information, people to get in contact with. Over here's the call sheet. There's a general crew call time. There's actually a second part of this call sheet. It just didn't really fit, and I thought maybe we'd just keep everybody's name private or whatever that was working on the show. But on the back side, or on the second page of the call sheet, will be all the departments and everybody that's going to be working that day and what their specific call time is, because your call time could be different, especially if you're an electric or a grip or something like that and there's a pre-call. You don't want to miss that pre-call. And if you just look at the general crew call, but then you have an hour or 2 hour pre-call and you show up at the general crew call, that's a no-no. Don't want to do that. There's other pretty valuable information, like weather information here, like if you're going to be shooting outside. I think, yeah, there's another helpful information is the sunset and sunrise. Because what if we're, you know, near the end of the day, as far as day is when it comes to sunlight, we're shooting a day interior scene and we're falling behind, and that day interior becomes, you know, a night interior, or where we have to light it to be looking like daytime inside when it's actually nighttime outside. So, you know, that information is very helpful. And then, you know, the breakdown of the scenes is really helpful too, because this is probably the most up-to-date information as far as what scene's going to be shot in which order. Even between the production meeting where we hopefully hashed out all the schedule madness, things still will change as far as what scenes are going to be shot when. Oh, and then at the bottom there's this is helpful too. Is like everybody's trying to help everybody stay a step ahead. You know, I'm trying to have my best technician be a couple steps ahead of me so I can stay a couple steps, or at least a step ahead of the DP and the first AD. The first AD is helping me stay ahead by sending me the next day's schedule shot list or a scene breakdown, and that's what's down here. So this would be, you know, this scene structure up here is for the day, and then this one is, you know, what's going to happen next. Even at lunch, the second assistant director or maybe a key PA or somebody walk around ideally with a hard copy of a preliminary call sheet for the next day that we get to look over and make sure that everything is good to go as far as, you know, the scene order and who's going to be on the crew. And usually I'll take a quick look at it, mostly looking at the scene information, and then I'll pass it off to the best technician to make sure that the appropriate crew is on there, because, you know, the best boy will be handling who's coming on what days. And, you know, I'll tell the best electric, oh, we need 3 extra people for this crazy load in and really extensive lighting and long day, you know, and then the best will go. And, you know, it depends. The best could try to negotiate, and you know, they're kind of in a cool spot because they can be like, hey, you know, the gaffer told me we need these things, you know, and there's no like real emotional attachment to it, you know. It's like where the best boy can just kind of hold the ground and be like, I don't know, this is what my boss needs, please approve these things. And, you know, and they go back and forth, and then the gaffer can get involved if like, oh, this is over budget, we can't do this. And, you know, and you just kind of pick and choose your battles accordingly. Oh, hang on one second. What is this? Oh, you're talking to everybody. Okay, cool. Ready to serve.
We're good. We're good.
Very important to know.
Yeah, I know.
Lunch is ready to be served, for sure. Okay, let's move on. Principal photography. Okay, cool. Let's see. I don't even know what okay. Hang on. I don't know how to do this still, but okay. So here, let's just do this. There is this very basic breakdown of how every scene and every shot within that scene is supposed to be choreographed per the first assistant director. So we got the call sheet. We, you know, real quick, let's go over some things before we jump into this quick breakdown. But, you know, we'll land trucks, and we'll offload gear and send it to the staging that we've discussed on the Tech Scout. And then there's a blocking rehearsal. This is usually kind of a private thing where it's the first assistant director, the director, the DP, the script supervisor, production designer, or probably not the production designer, like the art director, and sound. I think sound is usually there. And this is really where, and the first assistant director will be there, and then maybe some specialty people, like if there's stunts or something like that. or some sort of animal wrangler or something where there's another element to it that is a specialty type of a thing. But like, the set deco and that's probably, I don't know if there's props there or not, honestly, but the gaffer's not there, the key grip's not there. And this is it's called a blocking rehearsal. The director and the DP and really the talent and the director really hash out the scene, and they're in the space that they're going to be shooting the scene, and they really kind of go over the elements and figure it out and figure out the blocking and where they're going to kind of put camera to capture all of that and make sure that all those elements work, and try to have foresight into what the reverse is going to look like, and does that blocking work for all these shots that we want to capture the scene and how we want to tell that story visually. Okay, and so once they kind of figure out all that, they invite the rest of the department heads, like the gaffer and the key grip and stuff like that, and we do a marking rehearsal. And so we kind of sit into a corner and we kind of watch the whole scene play out. I think they do a blocking rehearsal where we just kind of sit back and we just watch the whole scene kind of unfold and see where the talent goes and just get a sense of the overall kind of how the whole scene's going to play out. And then we do a marking rehearsal where the the second assistant camera will place kind of key marks on the ground, the little T's that you see on BTS photos, or you see them doing that on set. There's kind of like marking, kind of like an animation where there's these key frames where there's specific points where they land that they kind of need to land, and that's for everybody. That's for like framing of the camera, and the first assistant camera needs to understand that they go from this mark to that mark and what the pulling of the focus is going to be. I have to, or the gaffer has to light those marks. And the DP will kind of talk about where the camera placement is for each of the shots that make up the scene.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And yeah. So
I like to think about all the marks that they set. I like to think about those as a checklist for the gaffer.
Ryan's saying he likes to consider the T marks on the ground for talent as kind of like a list that you have to check off. Like, okay, and this is kind of, once the rehearsal is over with the main talent on a bigger show, or somebody's kind of steps in, whether you have second team, which is kind of lookalikes that come on set while the main talent goes and gets made up and put into wardrobe and stuff like that. And we have people that hopefully resemble them as far as skin tone and height and wardrobe and hair or whatever. Or it's some PA, or it's the first assistant director standing in, or a grip. There's Grips in Frame or whatever is the Instagram account or whatever, where they got Grips and Electrics standing in for talent. Anyway, and we light all these kind of key frames. We'll have people or your second team standing on all these things, and it just kind of depends on the scene and the location and the story, as far as how you light those T marks and what happens with the lighting in between those. Maybe the T mark at the desk is well lit, and then they walk towards the door of this bedroom, and that's supposed to be really dark there or something. It opens the door and now he's silhouetted with the hall. You know what I mean? Just kind of like all that kind of plays into how you're going to tell that story visually through lighting. Okay, and so once we've got the T marks on set, now we're really going in there and we're lighting. We're rigging fixtures, or just placing fixtures, placing the key lights, and if there's fill and backlights and all that stuff. And we'll get into all that in just a minute. Yeah, okay, so then when we kind of have these broad strokes with the, after we block and then we light, and then we do an in-camera rehearsal, we get first team or the main actors back on set that we're going to shoot with, and we'll do some rehearsals in camera, which is huge. A lot of times people want to shoot the rehearsal because they think it makes it go faster. because what if we nail it on that first rehearsal? But you know, that's like 1 out of 100 chances, just because there's so much going on, especially, you know, depending on how complex the shot is, especially in cinema and making movies. There's a lot of camera movement, and there's a lot of choreography between all these different departments, like pulling focus from, you know, walking deep into the set up to more of the foreground, and there's a dolly push in for that, and there's a lighting gag. Maybe he goes and somebody turns on a lamp, and that's something that my department's responsible for. And, you know, really quickly all these things can kind of add up and make, you know, a somewhat simple shot really kind of complicated. And that's where rehearsing and making sure that all those elements are all kind of coming together and everybody's on the same page. So many times I've seen where we shoot a rehearsal, and near the end of the take, when the talent is supposed to kind of walk through the door and shut the door, the talent thinks that, you know, when they open the door or some random time is when the scene is over, and they just kind of open the door and then they stop and turn back and like look at the camera and be like, are we, you know, they don't really know what's going on. So like rehearsing can smooth out all those things. You know, even we're shooting digital, we can shoot and shoot and shoot because we've got teradecks and on teradecks of hard drives and our DIT or whatever. You know, back when it was film, it was much more, much more expensive to shoot and shoot, or, you know, the camera's rolling and the director's kind of giving last minute notes. Like that just doesn't work that way. So it's a little different, but still this kind of order of operations here really makes things move smoothly throughout the day. And we do this for every setup, multiple setups in the scene. Okay, so once we've rehearsed, then we there's tweaks, obviously, or maybe not. There could be, or, you know, since we kind of did our general pushes, or you know, we did our broad strokes in our lighting before our rehearsals, and then we can really see, okay, he keeps, oh my gosh. Hang on, guys. I don't want my computer to die. I didn't realize it wasn't patched in. All right, there we go. We got juice. Okay. Where were we? Tweaks. Oh yeah, this is kind of the finessing, you know. Talent's always kind of looking in a certain direction or whatever it is, or you got to tweak the key light, or, you know, the ratio isn't dialed in just right, and so, you know, we need to take some fill away or add some, or whatever it is. But usually these are kind of small little tweaks that we can do before we actually go for a take, and, you know, hopefully land it in a couple shots. You know, doing this over and over again, my favorite time as a gaffer is the blocking rehearsal, where I get to step away, because usually I'm like at the monitor or on set next to the DP, continually directing the lighting, whether we're setting up or even during a shot. On the alternate, I had to have, I never really care or really worry about the script, as far as having sides, which is like a mini version of the script of what we are, what the lines are for each scene that we're shooting for those particular shots that we're and scenes that we're shooting that day. But one scene we had some car light gag passing through the window, and we wanted to make sure that that continuity of those cars passing was, you know, was accurate throughout the scene. So I had to have the sides and mark where in the script that the lighting gag happened. So anyway, it was just talking about always working, and how the blocking rehearsal that's private with the director and the talent and a couple of other keys, I get to step away and go take a break, go to the crafty table. It's like crafty time for the gaffer. Anyway, all right, because usually it's nonstop thrill ride. Despite that, let me just make sure. Oh, okay, so we did some takes. Let's just talk about some other quick things that kind of happen in this day in of shooting. You know, there's a term that the AD says, moving on. That's obviously when we're moving on to to anything really, whether it's an insert or insert or another setup or whatever. There's a similar term called a new deal. That's a new setup. That's not necessarily an insert shot. It basically means, you know, that we're moving on to a new setup, even if it's within the scene, or a new scene as a new deal. You'll hear them. Okay, new deal. Anyway, flipping the world, that's where we're looking, you know, one way on some overs, or we're getting coverage and then we have to flip the world, which means the camera like does a 180 and we shoot the other side of the set. That's huge. That can take time. But we try to anticipate that and set up as much as we can for that, as you can, as far as, you know, pre-rigging a backlight for the reverse and stuff like that. Insert shots, that's kind of like a tight shot of a quick, simple action. Like maybe in the wide shot, he goes and picks up the phone and dials a number. There could be an insert shot, a tight on the phone of him or her or whoever it is dialing that number. Sometimes those can kind of fall in the lower priority, and those are kind of the first things that get cut. And since they're tight shots, those are things that can actually be shot later if need be. You really want to shoot the coverage of the scene, shoot your wide shot of the scene, and really get the meat of your scene, and then all the kind of cherries on top and the inserts, or, you know, the kind of breathable, creative shots of, you know, the windows half open, the curtains like, you know, undulating or whatever, are all just kind of extras, insert shots. You can, you know, those usually fall low in the priority if you have to start cutting things to make your day, which means shoot all your scenes and shots that you need to for that day. A room tone, that's where we have to be silent and kind of capture the tone of the room, whether there's kind of a vibration of some sort that sound can't get rid of. They use that in post for sound. Camera wrap, that's when we stop shooting, but there's still probably a lot of work that needs to be done if it's not a walk away, which means we kind of turn everything off, make it safe, and leave it pretty much the way it is. Some security things happen, maybe. If there isn't security on set and you have lamps outside or whatever, you might have to bring those inside to staging. Or if there is security, you know, overnight on a location, you can leave those things. You probably have to just cover them in plastic or something and make them water safe in case it's going to rain. Or, you know, in the Bay Area here, we have a marine layer where it's just kind of moisture in the atmosphere from the ocean and stuff like that. Things that we have to do before we walk away.
Hey Matt.
Yeah.
I just took a look at the rest of our presentation. Obviously, this is our first time doing this. We are
so behind.
We got about 20 minutes left. I think we gotta just start blowing through the slides.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I know.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. Okay, we're just realizing that, you know, our 2-hour time slot
you got about a minute a slide at this point.
Is coming up really quick, so we're just gonna cruise through this here. All
right, Leo's got your blessing though, so Leo's giving you his blessing to keep going.
He's gonna be here till the end. It's all good. All right, cool. All right, let me just say, lost and damage. You know, things happen. But as long as, you know, you communicate those things pretty much right away, like, you know, a fixture falls over and it breaks and it's broken, you know, just tell production right away, you know, and then get the rental house involved. That hopefully can be swapped out. You just don't want to leave all this damage and lost gear, especially if you know it's lost. Sometimes you don't know that it's lost until the end, but, you know, it can, you know, be a blemish on your reputation and your team's reputation if at the end of the show there's this huge price tag from the rental house or wherever you're getting the gear from of all this lost and damaged gear. So So just, yeah, I think it's just best to just like push that out there and just say, hey, look, an accident happened, this thing fell over, or we broke this thing or whatever, and just get it out of your hands and let everybody know about it, and everybody just move on. And that way production can pivot accordingly as far as budget or whatever. Be like, okay, well, this expense has happened, now we can't give you lattes for the rest of the morning of the shoot, or whatever, sometimes, if it's just a broken stinger or something real simple, or, depending on how skilled your technicians are and the experience that they have, they can sometimes fix it themselves. But, things that are like an electronic ballast or something like that, I would try to open it up and fix it. Just try to get it replaced as soon as possible. Okay, let's move on. Wrap day. This is actually a wrap party here on the left. And this is just some technician pushing a cart into a truck. I didn't have too many pictures on a wrap day, but this is another day where we're back at the rental house. Especially on a larger show, you'll help make sure that everything's accounted for. If you guys build some custom fixtures and stuff like that, you'll disassemble those things. If you had your own kind of markings and tapes on your dimmers and all kinds of whatever, you want to just kind of clean all that stuff up. Make the gear back to how it was when you received it. Help the rental house count out the gear, make sure that everything's there. A lot of times you guys put things in the grip truck in certain places that make sense for the show, and the shop techs don't know exactly where you guys are putting all these things, and so you just want to kind of get everything back to normal. There's pickups and reshoots. It's kind of self-explanatory, like the insert shots that we didn't get, or some lesser scenes that weren't as important to get during principal photography. We can schedule those later on down the line. Okay, let's talk real quick about how we're lighting these scenes. There isn't really a fixture that does everything that you want. I mean, as much as Ari wants to say that the orbiter is that, it's not. And just like I think lighting is comparable to a painter, as far as lots of techniques, lots of different brushes, which are your lighting fixtures that all do different things in their own effective way, and you just over time really get the experience to learn how all those instruments work and do what you need them to do. You can use things that aren't meant to do certain things and do it, but there's probably a more efficient way of using something else, and that's just the fun of figuring it out as you go, and the exploration of lighting. But there are some kind of general things that we can talk about that help everybody communicate about how to light the scene and make sure everybody's on the same page. Like I was mentioning, this is our first assistant director standing in for talent on the alternate. But anyway, so, 3-point lighting, real simple concept. I'm sure a lot of us know about it, but we'll just go over it real quick. The key light is kind of the main source of lighting talent. And then there is a fill light, which traditionally would come, in this example, this is why I put this up here to hopefully give a reference, a visual reference. So you can see that kind of warmer, more neutral push on Hilton's face from camera left. That's the key light. And then actually the portal is on camera right, filling him in, that kind of more blue, and it's a little less bright there. And then there's 2 windows in the back of the frame, and we have some light matte 2Ls here that are helping accentuate the light coming from those windows. And this is my phone. This isn't the final frame or anything, and this is probably in the middle of us lighting it or whatever. But you can kind of see this fill side scratch from this light matte here, or there could be a more traditional backlight that would be right behind him, edging him out of frame so he pops off the background, especially with the background being so dark there. Maybe even a little more backlight would help. Again, creating that kind of 3D look, popping them out, edging them out, in that 2D world. And background lighting, of course, is the subtle exposure back here in the background is from that overhead source that's in the middle of the room. So that's kind of the 3-point lighting, or 4 if you consider the background lighting. You got the key, the fill, a backlight. There's some other lights too, scratch light, eye light, stuff like that, and then our background lighting. So these are kind of, you know, just terminology that we can use to help communicate with other people, especially the key grip and the DP and stuff like that. And they'll use these terms as well. Oh, and this was just kind of a general, this red arrow is the camera, object being your talent or whatever. We're keying from camera left, the fill light, but this is kind of more traditional 3-point lighting. It seems in the modern age, we'll key from camera left, let's say, and maybe it'll be a little more sidier off to the side, and then we'll wrap that key light with the fill, and so the key and the fill will be on camera left. And then maybe there is some fill, it's passive fill, or, you know, with cameras being so sensitive these days, depending on the environment that you're in, you know, there could be negative fill, which would be, you know, black duvetine or whatever, taking away light from that side of the camera. Okay, cool. Let's keep cruising. Oh, I love this stuff. Okay, cool. So, you know, as far as light, there's really these 4 properties of light that also help us communicate about, you know, directing the lighting or talking about lighting for any particular project. The first property of light, and I believe that for the most, they're all very important, but these are kind of in most importance, is angle of light, which is the direction from which it's coming from as far as lighting the subject. This picture on the left is just, you know, you can really see that beam there. You really see that angle. That's the sun coming through the shades, and we had a little haze in there. And so that's just like the idea of the beam and the angle. And that was all about where the sun was. This middle picture is this music video that we did. That was such a mess. But we have this 1K baby down here. It's kind of uplighting them, kind of giving them this kind of kooky, kind of freaky kind of look into this madness of a scene for this music video. And so, oh, and then this next picture is, you know, it's like a light mat 4, kind of a toppy kind of corporate environment. And, you know, all of that is just angle of light, whether it's, you know, more natural, you know, traditional kind of off-camera Rembrandt kind of key push, or a toppy thing, underlit, real side lit. That's all about angle of light. And you can change that by moving the fixture around in relation to the talent. Next importance would be intensity. I'm sorry, guys, I'm just like totally dying here. The second property, intensity. You know, how bright does that fixture need to be to get a proper exposure? Whether, you know, we need a lot of light here, like this M90 in this commercial that we were doing some high-speed stuff with, or we're shooting this interrogation scene with just this practical overhead and really kind of you know, low lit, you know, look. Intensity. Woo! Moving on, quality of light is another property of light. There's kind of 2 things that kind of go into the quality of light. One is the specular quality of the source, which is about how much the what is it, the object or surface reflects light. So you can have like a single source, really hard light hitting a certain particular, whether it's skin or a piece of metal or, you know, wallpaper or whatever it is. How that object returns light is kind of its specular quality. And then there's also quality as far as that the light, and if it's hard or soft. a big part of it being soft or hard as far as the quality depends on the size of the source and the relation to the talent. So let's say we have a 4x frame that's like 2 feet away from talent on a close-up shot, and we have a light illuminating the frame evenly. And it's a really big source in the relation to the talent, which is just a couple feet away. But if we had that 4x frame, 100 feet away, that source, even though it's the same diffusion and it's the same size, but in relation to that subject, that light will appear a lot harder. So the size kind of that source determines how soft it is, or it's really about the quality of how much it wraps around the object because of how big it is in relation to the subject. I've been able to light some really beautiful looking stuff with like 2 4-foot Kino tubes in the horizontal position, like this, like 2, just, it's not a really tall, really big, large source like a 20x or a 12x. It's just like 8 feet of tube, but since that horizontal aspect of it wraps around talent's face and can look really good, it kind of depends on what you're shooting and what the story is to make that make sense in the location that you're shooting in. But it's all about that wrap. Okay, let's move on. Quality of light. So yeah, this is just interview, chimeras, double diffusion, and there's some hard light, doing some more high speed stuff. Okay, let's move on. And then the 4th property of light is the color makeup. Every source has kind of this, makeup of the color, the visual spectrum. Certain fixtures or practicals or on location lights or whatever all have different makeup as far as the color, but a lot of industry standard stuff tries to give you full spectrum, which gives you the best quality of color. And a lot of camera settings depend on how the color is perceived in your final image. I just wanted to bring up, I really like this shot. Oh, this shot over here. There's, color separation going on here with this kind of monochromatic kind of orange. And then there's this really dramatic pop of blue light here. And yeah, so, and you can play with that as much as you want, or the DP lets you. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's move on. Hey, Jenna, hopefully you're still here with us. We're getting back into the tools.
Hey, Matt.
Yo.
Could you actually just refresh your PowerPoint for a second?
What do you mean?
Oh, just go to the top of that window and just refresh it.
Like this?
Yeah, and then just go back to the 4 properties of light slide.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Sorry. Oh my God.
I took the liberty of just rearranging things a little bit. So you'll just go back to that 4 properties of light slide, and then we'll just continue from there.
Okay. Hang on 1 second. I have to do it like this so I can get my notes. Sorry, y'all. Hang on.
I think that while we're waiting for this, I think that Matt had some really good questions in the chat, where he just asked, technically correct exposure does not equal creatively correct exposure. Is this true?
Sure.
Yeah. And I guess what I said was that it's not exactly true.
I mean, can people hear you?
Yes, people can hear me.
Oh, thank God. I was thinking that they could.
I know you're really gonna have to recite this.
Yeah.
Maybe the technically correct exposure is what is best to tell the story. And so, so the technically correct exposure is creatively correct in that instance. But maybe there's a time where it just makes more sense, for the story, for you to expose the camera 2 stops under, or 1 stop under. And in that case, again, it's kind of, we come back to the thing of, there are no rules, only tools, where, exposure is just a tool for you to tell the story. And
Or like a reference point.
Yeah, it's
where
just
you
like,
can deviate.
and it's just like, of course, making movies is subjective. And, at the end of the day, we just need to find a way to tell the story in an interesting and creative way. And, sometimes that
I don't know what's going on.
means doing something a little bit weird.
I don't
What
know.
you could just do, Matt, is just go back to the slide view. Sorry, I threw a curveball at you here. You could just do it from here. We can see it just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Property of light. Yeah. Okay. So, another huge thing about lighting for a scene is the motivation of the light. Here are a couple pictures where, this first picture here, this light mat 4 that's just to the camera left or camera right there of this woman sitting in bed reading or something like that, is motivated off of the lamp that we see. I'm sorry I don't have like screen grabs. I'll definitely, in general, work on getting you those things, because I know I post a lot on Instagram and people want to see, final frames or whatever. But, this lamp is in frame, and we, as the audience, believe that this light mat that's lighting her, and that, because technically, in reality, that lamp at that angle wouldn't wrap around her face. But, as far as visually being interesting or pleasing, or that we can see that person and that it's part of the visual storytelling, is to need, and exposure is big too. Having this off-camera source allows us to control the lighting more, because you can light from practicals, but it's a little difficult. The cameras are getting better and better at their dynamic range, but a certain the practical needs to be at a certain level for it to have a proper exposure when it's on camera. And that level of intensity of that fixture that's in, or practical that's in frame, might not be bright enough to give proper exposure to the talent. So we have to accentuate it with off-camera movie lighting, like this Light Mat 4 is doing. And then it also helps us make it to look prettier or whatever, as far as giving it shape and giving it that three-dimensional look, and telling that story visually of whatever's happening in the scene right there. And then similarly, this is a short film we shot in this bathroom, and I think it's just kind of general information that everybody kind of believes and expects almost, that when you're in a large bathroom like that the lighting's going to probably be fluorescent and overhead, and that was what was called for that scene. And so the motivation there isn't necessarily visual, like we can see the lamp in that first shot, but that everybody kind of expects it. Like if the bathroom, and it all kind of depends on the story too. I mean, that bathroom could be lit really dramatically for some reason, and as long as that helps tell that story. And then going back to this other great photo here, again, this is my phone, and there's just one talent. The person's sitting down with the newspaper, and there's the art director and the DP's back there adjusting the curtains, and the director is standing right next to the sky panel. But this sky panel, that off-camera movie source, is motivated by the window light, and that sky panel helps wrap that window light around the talent's face so we can see them, and it'll feel natural and believable, because we understand that the window is providing the light for the scene in the story. Okay. Another important thing about motivated lighting and the environment that you're in is the environment really kind of dictates your ratio for the most part. We were doing some interviews, and we were doing a bunch of interviews for this one particular project, and we needed, and you know, the DP and I were trying to, on some level, create thematic kind of elements as far as the lighting and how it will look. And, you know, we kind of went with this kind of natural, like 4:1 ratio type of a thing, which is kind of a little dramatic, but not too dramatic. And we can give shape, and we can tell the difference between the key light and the fill light and stuff like that. But when we were lighting a particular interview, and I'm sorry I don't have the frame, that's kind of an NDA work in project, but on the fill side was this big whiteboard. And, you know, our department tried to break up the whiteboard and put all these kind of fake notes on the whiteboard to make that a little more visually interesting. But because there was this big kind of overall whiteboard on the fill side, you know, to get our ratio as far as our thematic lighting ratio, you know, the difference between the key and the fill, when we started to dial that in and get it to where we had done it in other locations for other interviews, like it just didn't make sense. It like felt weird. It looked weird because we brought in all this negative fill just off camera to like get that ratio and stop that white wall from bouncing back onto talent. But when we did that, it like didn't make sense because, and then we were like, well, why does this look weird? And it was because, you know, that environment had this big white wall on the fill side, but then the fill was so dark and dramatic. And so, you know, it's just kind of, even though you've got all these philosophies and themes and stuff like that you want to bring into a project, you know, there is some sort of veto, as it were, as far as the location and how that kind of works and makes it believable, as far as motivating light. Okay, let's move on. I don't know how to do that anymore. Okay, moving on. Okay, so, you know, we talked about all these kind of types of lighting and styles of lighting, and I'm now like realizing what Ryan has done to kind of wrap this up. We're almost done, guys. That's great. I actually thought about anyway. So, you know, one way to help you understand where everything is as far as the angle and the intensity and the color, you know, I don't think there's really any way to kind of measure quality just, you know, I mean, there's a couple ways. We won't get into that, but, you know, the gaffer's glass can help you identify the angle of light, making sure that that's right. You know, the light meter is measuring your intensities and reflexivities of objects through the spot meter or the incident meter. And you can do that overall and find you know, the middle ground between key and fill, and you can measure sources individually to making sure that highlights and the shadows and everything are at certain levels of exposure, as well, you know, as your color meter, making sure that, you know, let's say that sky panel in that previous picture that was wrapping the window light, you know, the sun is at a certain color temperature. And it makes it more believable, that sky panel wrapping that window light source. You know, obviously if it's the same color temperature, you know, if that was tungsten or something, it would feel like a separate source that's coming from somewhere else. And if it's not motivated, it will, you know, break the illusion of disbelief for the audience. And then, a really great tool as well for the gaffer is a laser pointer. It allows you to kind of direct and show people of where things should go, you know, without having to physically go there or give a long explanation over the walkie about where it could go. you can just kind of use your laser pointer. And they come in different intensities and stuff like that. I have two. One's kind of like a low light one. I have this one that's like pretty bright, which is pretty fun and pretty cool. Like you're, night exterior, and 4 houses down, you want to put a fixture to put a wash on the house. I can use that one. But when we're inside in a small bedroom, using that one, it like lights up, like literally lights up the room because it's so powerful. And so I have, a smaller one that's more subtle. It's for cats. Anyway, laser pointers are great for, directing, because, the gaffer is the director of the lighting. So that really helps as well. I think we touched base on it. Foot candles is an absolute measurement of light. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Is one way you can read sources. But usually you're dealing with f-stops and camera settings and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the end. We did it.
Yay.
Is there any questions overall, or we're just 10 minutes? Actually, this was 2 hours. We started at 7:10 and it's 9:09.
There you go. 2 hours exactly. This is actually originally where the PowerPoint ended. Remember?
Maybe
before we started to add things.
So some things that we did cut that I'd love to talk about and are very important as far as being a gaffer, and especially in pre-production and stuff like that, is the use of photometrics, which can kind of give you a sense as far as distance and output and beam spread and stuff like that. Maybe we can do this again soon, and kind of a part 2 or something like that, and walk through some of that.
I'd really like to hear if anybody has any ideas for
something
future,
else.
Yeah, like what else should we do? Because it's like we have a bunch of ideas, but we really want to, it's like that's what we think. Okay, interesting. That's a good one already.
Yeah, keep it coming, because it's kind of funny. We've developed a bunch of workshops that were to be hands-on, and they come to the shop and we get down and dirty and touch gear. And now, with this shelter in place that seems to at least go on for another month, we're kind of pivoting as far as less hands-on stuff and more stuff that we can kind of talk about and have discussions about or whatever. So anything grip and electric related, and camera on some level, Ryan's an excellent DP, and maybe we could come up with some camera stuff or whatever it is. Let us know, and we'd love to create some content and do this again.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Yes. Okay. All right.
All right. Cool.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Very grateful. This is a huge turnout. It was awesome. I had a great time. Thanks for listening to me go on and on.
All right. See everybody later.
Take care, guys. Stay safe.
Oh, he didn't hear me. Well, bye, guys.
Bye.
Boy. Lonnie! It's just his face.
What's up, Matt?
Hey, buddy! It's just a picture of you. You're not...
I don't have a webcam.
Oh, my... You woodlander. I gotta go, dude. I'm done talking. I'm hoarse. I'll catch you later.
Hope listen to your silky voice all day.
Jeez. All right, I'll see you soon.
Bye, Matt.